All right, moving right along, Jordan, in the show tonight, we are going to talk about some of these breakout freshmen, if you will, or these freshmen that contributed a lot to the Clemson football team last year. There was a lot of names there that kind of helped Clemson in some pretty big ways last year. Now they're turning, the page to their sophomore season. And we're going to talk about a couple of these guys tonight, Jordan, and give kind of some projections on what their sophomore campaign may look like. As you know, sophomore campaigns are kind of one of those things that go either way, right? When you're looking at it in sports, specifically football, a lot of times you'll have these guys have breakout freshman seasons and they hit, what we like to call as a sophomore slump, right? Or where they battle injury, or maybe they start feeling themselves a little too much from the success that they had as a freshman, and they don't quite get the production that you would expect building on from what they did as a freshman in their sophomore campaign. So, Jordan, let's talk about some of these bigger names on Clemson's roster that had amazing freshman seasons and where we see them produce, what level we see them producing at for the 2025 Clemson football season and their sophomore campaign.
Yeah, this is a group that is going to tell us a lot about, when you look at the names on this list, and it's going to tell us a lot about what this team ends up accomplishing this year. I mean, this is last year's freshman class. I mean, you had several guys come in and step up in big time roles, especially towards the back half of the season. And this is a group that's going to comprise quite a number of your big time contributors this year. I guess we can start on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, I think the two obvious names that are going into their sophomore years are wide receivers Bryant Wesco Jr. and TJ Moore. I think the expectations are going to be extremely high for them. Both borderline 5-star recruits, and they were second and fourth, I believe, in amongst true freshmen in receiving yards last year. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on them to kind of build on that. And one of those things is this is a game that has a limited number of plays, a limited number of snaps, a limited number of available touches. So obviously statistically, you wonder kind of what does their sophomore year look like? Because there'll be some things different. I mean, they have the same quarterback, but obviously the running game is going to be different. Obviously different running back. One thing I guess that works in their favor is a guy like Jake Brinkstool being gone, and who ate up a lot of receptions. He had 49 catches last year. So how are those touches distributed?
Right.
And then you got to consider you have veterans like Tyler Brown coming back, who was injured last season, and you bring in Tristan Smith from the transfer portal, who has brought more to this room than I think even the coaching staff expected. It seems so. That's one of the things that you have to wonder, because like I said, there's only so many snaps and so many touches that can go around. So, obviously the more than the statistics, it's about, how do they improve as football players?
Right.
It's, Bryant Wesco is a guy that came in pretty ready to go from a technical standpoint. Obviously the athleticism, the speed. He's one of arguably the fastest player on offense. And that big playability, shined pretty early when he got the chance, and I think down the stretch when he got hurt, that kind of hampered kind of his end production. But I think the sky's the limit for him. But one of the things that we talked about and was a theme throughout the year and even before the season was his size. He was very, very thin coming in. I think he was only I think he weighed in when as an early enrollee. I think he was like 160 something, 160 pounds, something like that. Reports have been that he's got up to 185. He's stronger. He's faster. So what does he look like in year two? Um, I don't know. What do you think? Because I think you mean you couple his speed and his big play ability, but now if he's a guy that also has some physicality and some meat on the bones, and he's stronger at the catch. He can be stronger at the catch point. He's going to be
Yep.
tougher to get hands on, out of his release. Like who's guarding that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the, you just touched on it there. And I think that's the biggest avenue that if you're a Clemson fan and you're looking for, hey, Brian Wesco was amazing last year. Where is his biggest potential to growth? You just hit on it right there. The physicality, right? The ability to get hands off of them and not be pressed at the line of scrimmage and get caught up, right? And then throws off the entire timing of your route. And you're no longer an option for the quarterback because you can't get free, right? You're not physical enough because you don't have that body mass yet, that muscle, that strength to kind of get off of those hard presses that some of those DBs did to Brian Wesco last year that kind of limited a little bit of what he did. And, no disrespect to him. He obviously had an amazing season, but that's certainly where he can grow the most. Being more physical at the point of attack with the football, doing those crossers across the middle, getting free off of press coverage and not letting it alter his route in any way. That's the biggest avenue, I think, for Brian Wesco to grow from a wide receiver standpoint this year, right? We already know that he is a really good route runner, right? We already know his breakaway speed and the ability to take the top off the defense. That's already been proven from literally game 2 on, right? Last year, he proved the ability to take the top off the defense. But that physicality, right? Building that muscle, building that more slender frame out a little bit more. And I think he's probably focused his attention on that this offseason. And I'm excited to see where he's at from that standpoint. How much has he grown from a physicality standpoint? Because if he puts that together, to your point, who is guarding that? His big play ability goes through the roof because now you can't press him anymore because he can get off of it. And then if he does have that physicality and that ability to get off of press man coverage, right? Once he gets off of it, that dude's not catching back up to him. It's over, right? All Cade's got to do is drop it in the basket, and he's banging his head off the goalpost. So really exciting to think about what could be for a player like Brian Wesco in year 2 in this Garrett Riley system.
Yeah, 100%. And he's only going to continue to get better and more refined as his career progresses. I think he kind of in a weird way, as good as he was last year, I still feel like he's being undervalued maybe by some in the fan base. I think maybe because the excitement that TJ Moore brought towards the back half of the year, but I think that Brian Wesco absolutely could potentially, take another even bigger step in year 2, just being bigger and potentially it gotten even faster, which would be crazy to say. But like you said, and it's not even just the physicality getting off press; it's being stronger at the catch point. On especially on his shorter routes. He's catching a slant or a curl or a dig across the middle, and being able to finish the catch through contact.
Absolutely,
he's got really really good hands, but it definitely helps to be bigger and being able to take some of those harder hits better, and it only makes you better as a receiver. So I'm really excited about what Bryant Wesco can bring to the table in year 2 because his athleticism, his big play ability could mean Clemson is a very very scary team vertically this year.
Yeah, absolutely. It is going to be terrifying. And talking about his counterpart over there, TJ Moore. Where do you kind of see the biggest jump that he could have over this summer, Jordan? As far as obviously you talk about the huge breakout that Brian Wesco had towards the beginning of the season, and then TJ Moore towards the end just kind of took over. I mean, and he really started to come into his own, but it was a bit of a slower process for him than it was for Brian Wesco, right? Brian Wesco he came out the gates and made his presence known very early on. And you saw TJ Moore, as it went on, he just kind of got better and better and better and better. And, you listen to some of the commentary that Dabo had for him, and he talked about some of the bad habits that he had from high school, just playing against guys that were just inferior competition to him, right? And some of the bad habits that had him playing with at times. And obviously he got better as the season went, but where can you see his biggest growth from his freshman campaign to his sophomore campaign as far as being a playmaker for this Clemson offense?
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on it, and that's something that Dabo talked about. And just he's a bigger bodied kid. He's got great athleticism. He's got great hands. He's just very natural at the position. It's just about being more refined on some of the little things. I think it's when you're a kid with his talent and he's done it the way he's done it. You kind of slip into those bad habits. So I do think just being more refined in his routes, certainly, especially his shorter routes, because I think he's got good. I think he actually is a good route runner. But there are always things that he can be better at. And when it comes to when he's not going running a post or something, like some of the more technically advanced and technically intricate routes, whether it's like a whip or I don't know, it could be anything.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things that I want to see from him is just being more detail oriented. And I think if he is his understanding of the offense, certainly it got better and better, and his feel for space, like all of those things, I think are things that if he's better at in 2025, that, obviously the sky's the limit for him. And, I definitely see a first round talent in the future.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean,
when you watch him,
he's definitely one of those guys that, as you expect him to continue to, become more polished as, a route runner and doing the little things and getting the various nuances of the game, you expect that guy to most certainly grow into a unanimous first round draft pick. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I think it would be more surprising if he didn't kind of leave Clemson as grown into that kind of player.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, let's give some of the defense a little bit of love, Jordan. Obviously, you think about freshmen on the defensive side of the ball that kind of had massive contributions, and you think of Ashton Hampton, obviously, and then obviously you think of Sammy Brown as well. Those are kind of the two marquee names that kind of jump out in your mind as far as kind of your breakout freshmen from last year that really contributed in a big way. And let's talk about Ashton Hampton first and foremost. I mean, the sheer size of this guy on the field is crazy. And his athleticism paired with the size and length that he has in his arms is, I mean, it can become a deadly combination. Like I think the sky is the limit for Ashton Hampton as far as a defensive back at Clemson. I cannot wait to see what he truly becomes, because I think we saw flashes of it last year, maybe not as consistent, obviously being a freshman, still learning things at the position, still learning the nuances of the defense. And obviously he's got a whole new defense to learn this year. So there is an element of that on the defensive side of the ball for those guys that the offensive side doesn't have. But I can't be more excited about Ashton Hampton and what I think his abilities and what he will eventually become at Clemson. What are your thoughts on Ashton Hampton and kind of where he goes from his freshman campaign jumping into his sophomore campaign.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same. I mean, the talent and ability that he displayed last year, I think it surprised a lot of people because he was kind of especially I remember when he committed, it didn't make a ton of noise. But you got him out of Tallahassee, being
Right.
his dad being a former Florida State coach, but it didn't generate a ton of buzz nationally. But I think when he got on campus, it was very apparent. Oh, this kid is going to be something. I mean, he was just physically ready, more ready than most freshmen, and couple that with he was able to work his way into the rotation very early on and eventually becoming a starter. Especially with the way Shelton Lewis was dealing with injuries and Jaden Lucas at times, and it made sense. But what's really exciting about him is that you feel like he can do anything for this defense. I mean, I think you could play him at corner, boundary, or field. I think you could play him at safety. I think you could play him at nickel. I think you might see him at nickel a good bit this year with guys like Jaden Lucas and Shelton Lewis coming back into the rotation. There's a lot of he just brings a lot of positional versatility that I think is a luxury to have on a defense, and I think Tom Allen is going to be really excited to see what he can do. I love watching him at corner, so I wouldn't be upset if they just say, "Man, we're just gonna leave you out there until it doesn't work." But I do think that he does bring a level of flexibility that is rare in college football and is really a luxury to have. So that's exciting as well, and I'm excited to see kind of where Tom Allen fits him into this defense, and because I think he can play anywhere and be successful. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, sky's the limit. You mentioned his position versatility, which just makes him an even bigger weapon for Clemson and the coaching staff and the various ways that they can use him on the field, and that's what makes him so unique is that size that he has, coupled with his athleticism. So, again, really excited about him. I think his projection for his sophomore campaign is really high. I think he is going to be one of the best defensive backs Clemson has in 2025, and we need him to be to get where we're going. So, and then obviously looking at linebacker Sammy Brown, obviously, last year had an early injury in the linebacker room, and he probably had to step into a little bit bigger of a role than they probably initially had for him heading into the season. You remember Colby McLeod goes down with the torn ACL. He was looking at some playing time last year, and obviously Sammy Brown comes in and fills in nicely. I remember time and time again, Jordan, us going on the post-game live video, and somehow Sammy Brown not playing all 4 quarters, but somehow consistently leading the defense in tackles time and time again. He's just a guy that finds the ball. He's a football player. He's a guy that puts himself in the right positions. And just kind of a baller out there. He's a really good linebacker. Obviously had some freshman mistakes. He had some growing pains, obviously. But again, he put a really solid freshman campaign on, and much like Ashton Hampton, I expect him to grow immensely from year 1 to year 2, especially with the addition of a coach like Tom Allen coming on, and then you got the intensity of a young coach in Ben Boulware. I think there will be a renewed kind of focus on, I don't know, that dog mentality of the linebacker group that we used to, that we've come to know as Clemson linebackers. We haven't always had the best linebacking core out there or the most athletic linebackers out there, but we've had dogs out there at linebacker year in and year out, and I think you're going to see a return of that. Sammy Brown is going to be a key cog in the wheel for this retooled Tom Allen defense, and I'm excited to see how he improves from year 1 to year 2. Your thoughts on Sammy Brown?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm excited to see because it felt like at times when you watch Sammy Brown, you just saw an athlete going out there and
Yeah.
just and making plays. But now like under Ben Boulware's tutelage and a Tom Allen defense, where I feel like there's, like you said, there's going to be a renewed energy. I'm just excited to see, like, just as he gets more detail oriented as far as like you know the the intricacies of playing linebacker.
Hmm.
I think he's only going to be just an even better football player. So, um, Sammy is a kid that you're never going to have to worry about him, bringing it every weekend. So, and this is with Barrett Carter gone and obviously Wade, it's him and Wade Wood as like those are the guys right now.
Yeah.
And so, I think he's going to seize the opportunity and be pretty phenomenal this year. So, excited to watch him play.
Yeah, absolutely. Going to be super exciting um, to see where he's at. All right, to wrap it up here on our sophomore projections, Jordan, anybody that you want to mention, maybe guys that aren't on the radar right now, but are going into their sophomore campaigns that you could see having a significant impact on the Clemson Tigers in 2025?
Yeah. Another name is Ricardo Jones at safety. Obviously, he had some limited opportunities in year one, but really flashed with the opportunities he did get. I know he had an interception. He had some tackle, some tackles, some pass breakups, and some limited time and some spot duty. Um, I'm excited for him. I loved him as a recruit, um, and obviously with the departure of R.J. Mickens. Um, obviously that means there's a opportunity for more snaps in 2025. Um, so I'm excited to see what he does with it.
Yeah, absolutely.